This is a demonstration of the iSplit application. This is our first alpha release of the software. Software is designed to enable the ability to print large size designs on small printers. So I've got a folder here with some example files. You can click on a file. Down at the bottom you'll see a preview of the job. We tend to want to see PNG files. This is an image format is what it's expecting right now. It can work with a number of different image formats. The reason that we sort of recommend PNG files is that you have the ability to support transparency. So for example, if I open up this, then we can see that there is white elements and the background has this same background gray, which means that this is a transparent image. So you have full support for transparency, but that's certainly not a requirement. We can show all of the files so that we can see, everything that's in the list and to be able to work with them. Now, so we've opened up this file. The first thing at the top, we can see what the width is of the image. Down at the bottom, we have our split marks. These are the actual bars that we'll use to set our split zone. And then we have our split pages size. So this, right now, the application is designed to create two pages out of one image. Now, when we're ready to start working with this, you want to determine what kind of sheet that you're going to print this on. So clearly this is a 10.5-inch height. So this will fit on an 11-inch sheet. Our printer that we're printing this with is an 8.5 width. So obviously we're going to print this on an 8.5 by 11 sheet. Now, when splitting a job, you want to make sure that you select the area where the pages, the resulting pages, will properly fit into your printed sheet. But you also want to try and do it in a fashion where you're splitting the job in an area that is the least likely to create a seam. So, in this it defaults to the center of the job, and here is the center. And of course, this is quite a busy area. There's not any real good areas in here that make, what I would call a real obvious seam. On the other hand, over on the other side of the image, if we kind of come over here into this area, then now we're sort of staying out of the area of the image that the eye is going to be attracted to, and we're working more in the area of the image where we have some apparent places that we can split with minimal cut lines that might show up. Now we can see down at the bottom we're still wider than our page, so we're going to have to pull this in so that we fall within the zone. So we've got a narrow page on the left, but the right side page is in the printable area, and we should be able to get a result with this that's workable. So we've selected that, we've got this set up, so now we just simply press this. Here we can either select that we want this to go into a particular location, or we can just put the output file into the same folder where our input files are, which is what we're going to do here. So we'll press the split button and it has finished. So here's our split of this job. So I've opened this is the 2-page file in Acrobat. I've got my page display set up for 2-page view. It's a great way to preview your jobs to make sure that you like what you have as a result. It puts the two pages side by side. Here on page 1, I can see that it's almost 4 inches by, just under 11. And if I go to the second page in the list here, then it's 8.4 by, again, the same height. And we can see how that it's done the split along these edges, and the result should go together pretty easily and really not be very visible as a final job. Then we have the letter size 8.5 by 11 and the letter XL 8.5 by 17. So these are the two main sizes that we're going to be working with. So you can start with either side. You can start with the left side or the right side. Generally speaking, I like to start with the side that has the most information to go down first. Either way is fine. One of the things, it's real important that you want to make sure that you've got the latest version of the transfer rip. This is a job that has a lot of transparency, and we typically find that these cuts also generate some additional transparency, and so we need to be able to support that. So you want to make sure that you have this preserve partial transparency selected. When you can see in this job, it makes a significant difference around the edges. And what we want to do is we want to reduce or eliminate, these little transparent edges and these partially transparent areas. We want to make sure that that's properly supported. In addition to that, we also want to make sure that we're pulling back the white toner from around the edge. So you want to utilize the underfilling option so that, like these little lines, in fact, this one has so much of those little lines, I'm actually going to go ahead and pull it back 3 pixels around the edge so that we make sure that we're not leaving bits of white sticking out around the edge. This is going to be very important when we go to piece this back together. Now, the amount of white, this is typical of whatever you would typically use for the transfer rip. Your Oki is going to put down a full coverage of white. You don't want that. You don't need that. That's too much white. We recommend no more than a 200% coverage like you see here. And in most cases, 150% coverage actually will give you better color and better detail in your job. Now, there's a variety of different screening options, but one of the things that we really, really like to recommend, especially if you're putting this onto a dark garment, is to use the screening as a mask. Good reasons for this: it pulls out the black in the job, it creates this rasterization that breaks up the image, and that rasterization itself can make it so much easier to piece this together and have completely invisible results. So if you can utilize the screening as a mask, we highly, highly, highly recommend it. So select your printer, number of copies, mirror, screening as a mask. In this case, I find that I like 27 as the mask value. Seems to be really a good one to use. Shadow tolerance in and around the 120 to 140 range is what typically I find as a good range. 120 will leave enough of the dark colors in the design so that you can maintain the detail and still have a nice looking rasterization, not so much black that you got multicolors from the black in the shirt and the black in the design. So it seems to be a pretty good starting point. Now, in terms of which dot shape to use, well, again, we're sort of stringing this together into 2 pieces. If you have the opportunity to use the line function and have it run in the same direction that the cuts are, Again, this is going to make it to where those cuts will be just virtually invisible once they're pieced together. So in this case, this design is running up and down, and so we want to run the line screening, at the 0 angle. So it would be, if you're using the line screen, you would typically run this at 0 for up and down lines, and put in 90. So put in 90 if you want the lines to run horizontal. So 0 for vertical lines running up and down the page, 90 for running horizontal. Then highlights and shadows, these are common values. You may even want to, drop down, use a little bit more highlights, shadows to get a nice result in the job. Then, key part of this whole thing is that we're working with the laser dart media, which is a transparent media. So we want to set this to transparency. We want to set it to multi-purpose tray. And then if you want to do an offset value, you can certainly do that. And so we're feeding this off to our printer, and we click print. Here, if you want to preview, what this might look like on a dark garment, this will help you to see that. So again, we're running 150% coverage. We're going to pull out 3 pixels. Important, important, important. We want to use the preserve transparency, because you can see what that is doing around these edges. Very important option to have that turned on. Then we have the same settings, 27 line, 120, 0, all of the same settings from here, and we print the second page. Okay, so first job, Fairy. Here we have our 2 print sheets, and we're going to press these together with the B adhesive sheets. One of the nice things about this is that we are able to essentially press both of these at the same time. So this saves us quite a bit of time in production. So we can just simply put them both onto the heat press. I want to peel the biggest one first, so we'll put the biggest one down at the bottom to peel it first. And we'll cover these with 2 pieces of parchment paper, 2 separate pieces, because we're actually going to use the parchment paper to keep the other one warm while we're peeling the first one. So we're running this about 310, medium high pressure, and the temperature on this would be 300 to about 310 degrees, anywhere in that range. Typically will do fine. Now, normally when you're working with an 8.5 by 11, you're pressing that for 90 seconds. If you're working the 11 by 17, you press it for 120 seconds. We're working with the 11 by 17 size, so we'll press that for the full 120 seconds, because then we're going to want to, peel each of those individually. So with one pressing, we'll get both sheets, and that's going to give us our, effectively what's going to be an 11 by 17 size for the design. Okay. So now we'll take this hot piece of parchment and put it on top of that one, and then we'll peel this side first. And then now we'll peel this side. So this gives us both pieces at one time. If there's any excess on your hot plate, be sure you wipe that off. It'll go in the back of your shirt otherwise. All right. So we take our scissors and we trim the edges. We've got the little white adhesive. We want to be sure and trim that off from around all of the edges. Ready to apply this, you can use both of these pieces together so that you get a sense of, how this is going to end up on the shirt. So you want to make sure that you're using this so that you get things centered correctly on the shirt the way that you want them. And then take away one of the pieces. Now we also recommend now with this that you also have a piece of parchment that's going to be a good size piece. And I'll show you why in just a moment. So when we're applying the first one, we normally would apply it with high pressure and for the full 30 seconds. So, instead of using the high pressure in the full 30 seconds when we're applying our first piece, what we're going to want to do with this is we're going to want to use medium to medium low pressure for about 15 seconds because we want to stick the design well to the shirt, but we don't want to really bury it deep into the shirt to start with. We want it to sit up high on the shirt because we're going to want the second half to kind of blend in with the first. So that's what we do with this. We press this and we're just kind of holding our hands on it to make sure that it's got, some pressure on it, pressing it down. And we're holding it there for about 15 seconds. So what that's done is it is heated up the design and it has pressed it into the shirt, but not deeply into the shirt. So now we're going to want this to completely cool off so that we can get it to peel away correctly. So we carefully take it away. And what we want this to do is to cool off completely. So now what we sort of recommend is that you just set these aside. You start working on your next shirt. So you can just come back and do this anytime that you want. But you want it to cool off completely. We use this, I got this piece of metal, does a great job of cooling it down completely, until it's cold. So that's cold. So now for the peeling, again, we really highly recommend that you use a real tight peel on this. Start from an area where you can kind of get a good start on it and do a very tight roll away of your design, of your transfer sheet, so that you roll it off of the sheet so that you get a nice transfer onto the shirt. All right, so now from here, a couple of things that you can do. So we can take the design and we can line it up, separately off of the sheet and then tape it down into place, which is a good way of doing it. Or once you get going with it and you figure this out, then you can do it on the heat press. So you get your best glasses on and you position the design. And so this is where the the transparent nature of the media plays such an important role in getting this lined up. And you can see the lines in the rasterization that help to match up with the lines that are in the design. Get those lined up. Now, once you've got it lined up, then what we have an edge, there's an edge of the media on this side that's going to be overlapping into this part of the design. Now, if I just covered this and pressed it, it's going to kind of press this edge, and this will typically leave a mark over in the other part of the job that you've been working with. So what I've found that helps with that is to actually take a piece of parchment paper and put it down right to the edge of your media, so that it helps to hold up that edge to keep it from burying down. So make sure your design is correctly lined up. Put your piece of parchment paper on, and then now cover the entire sheet with another piece of parchment paper. And then again, just like we did previously, we want to do this with light to medium pressure for about another 15 seconds, 15-20 seconds, to apply the second half of our design. So we're using our heat eraser to cool it off completely. And then again, we want to do a tight roll to roll the design away. Like this. And so now we've got a matte piece over here, a glossy piece in here. So this is where we really want the design to blend back in together. So we put this back onto the heat press. We cover it again with a large piece of parchment so that we're completely covering the design. And now we're pressing it with high pressure, full high pressure, to press it down deep into the shirt. So we really want to bury it deep into the shirt at this point. And as you can see, there's just no way to tell where this design was trimmed from. Just no way to tell at all. By putting it together this way, using the rasterization, we end up with beautiful final design, large size design that was done on a small size printer. Thank you.